Rick ain't normal, I don't give a fuck. I know all producers have their idiosyncrasies, meaning, you know, quirks and some weird shit. But he's just strange by strange standards. While we was downstairs doing hardcore rap records and shit, upstairs he had a bunch of people having koala leaves and doing some type of Tibetan freedom concert planning. And when was the last time you seen a bison in a nigga's studio?
Next to the Johnny Cash reels.
Yeah, Beastie Boys. Over 20 years into his career, dude ain't changed. He got his own vibe. I mean, it's Rick. You gotta love him for that. You guys is late. I had 8 songs already. On the feeling it, yeah.
I'm thinking maybe we start a cappella with, if you're having girl problems, I feel bad for your son. I got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one hit.
One of the most powerful forces in the universe is music. Music is a series of vibrations integrated, synchronized to produce a series of sounds. Music is magic. Music has the ability to wake up the dead, so to speak. Because of that, music, at least mainstream music, have been regulated by the elite since the beginning of time. Now, the elite controls all mainstream music that we listen to. Music is a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. It can wake you up or it can put you to sleep, which is what popular music, rap music in particular, is doing right now. The Illuminati controls what we hear on the radio. They control the artists and the music that they produce. Actually, the artist doesn't produce their own music. They're only the messengers of the elite. Now, suppose I told you that all of the hit songs in the past decades originate from the spirit world. What I mean by that is the artist himself or herself does not produce the music, but in fact that they get assistance in producing the music from spiritual entities. Now, like a song, let's say a very popular song like Billie Jean, for instance, you would say, well, you know, Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones came up with the concept, but in fact, a lot of these popular music were done through rituals where a spiritual entity would possess the artist, the producer, and the producer or artist would come up with the concept of the music from spiritual entities. Now, of course, this is done through secret societies that do such occult work. Now, this has been going back centuries. Now, in the beginning of this video, you saw a clip with Jay-Z producing his song 99 Problems. And he was talking about his producer named Rick Rubin. And he was talking about how Rick Rubin, you know, has this uncanny way of, you know, producing music where he has people upstairs doing Tibetan chant and some type of spiritual meditation. He's only giving you, Jay-Z's only giving you the tip of the iceberg. He's letting you in, and he's only giving you a very small portion of what really goes down. but you have to use your common sense and understand, you have to be able to see beyond the veil, is what I'm trying to say. I just showed you that clip just to give you, just to show you how, music is produced, how popular music is produced. There's more to this character named Rick Ross, Rick Rubin, than meets the eye. He's not just some average person. And he produces music in just about every genre: rap music, heavy metal. He's all over the place, and he's basically, you could say, he's the liaison between the elite and the artists. These secret societies go back decades. Now, I'm going to take you back 200-300 years back to Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. I believe most of you would agree that Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is by far one of the greatest musicians to walk the earth. From a child prodigy of age 5 until his death at age 35, he produced some of the greatest work of music. It's no secret that he was a Freemason, a member of the secret society. As you can see him here with his hand tucked nicely within his jacket, hidden from view. Now, this symbol signifies that he has secrets that are hidden from the public. It also signifies that he and other members like him are part of the unseen hand that shapes history and world events. Now, you can see other people like Karl Marx and Friedrich Nietzsche, and there's your boy Kim Jong-un, Harry, Colin, Napoleon, Rothschild, and whatnot. Now, even as a child, Mozart is depicted with his hand in a veiled position. The picture means that Mozart was controlled by this very secret society from the cradle to the grave. It seems that Mozart was actually an experiment, a child celebrity experiment in order to produce a genius, a musical genius. I also found out that Mozart was a good friend of Adam Weishaupt. You know Adam Weishaupt. Adam Weishaupt was a member of the Order of the Illuminati. Now, their symbol can be found on the back of the dollar bill, on the left-hand side. Now, isn't it a coincidence? What a coincidence how the greatest classical musician is all tied up with the occult and secret societies and Adam Weishaupt. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding Mozart is his death and how he died. Like who killed him. There's a movie called Amadeus that portrays him being killed by another musician who's jealous of him. And that's just to throw people off. Many of his works were Masonically inspired, and he was basically putting their business out to be seen by the public. But it's not just that, because unless you're a Mason or unless you spiritually in tune, most people wouldn't know what's going on anyway. But the fact that he was putting out a lot of this information upset a lot of his Masonic friends. That was one of the reasons why he was killed. Also, understand that he put out 2 operas One of them called um, the magic flute, which also has a lot of Masonic. It has a lot of Masonic implications uh, throughout the play. And the other one is called the Marriage of Figaro. That also is very Masonic. When you hear the word marriage, it's not talking about the traditional marriage. It's dealing with a much more spiritual marriage of marrying, becoming one with your higher self, so to speak. And in that play, two couples wanted to get married, but there was an adversary who was trying to pull them apart, trying to prevent them from becoming one. So, a lot of his works, such as he also had a lot of Masonic music, as you can see. Now, another thing that made the Illuminati very angry was the fact that he was killed because of a phenomenon called the Mozart effect. The Mozart effect is a set of research that was conducted that concluded that listening to his music, certain pieces, can improve performance in certain mental tasks such as memory, higher reasoning, having a higher IQ, and it can even cure a variety of disorders. This is something that you can look up on the internet. It's something that I knew years back. I even used it during high school in doing my math and science homework. Somehow listening to his music, classical music in general, but Mozart has specific songs that if you listen to it right before an exam, for instance, it can heighten and increase your IQ. And you want to especially have your children listen to his music as well. Now, Mozart was using the secrets that he was taught, and he applied them to his music. All the Illuminati Masonic secrets that was given to him, he put it in his music. His music has the ability to wake up the masses. And that same science, however, can be used to dumb down the masses, which is what is happening right now with popular music. Rap music in particular, back in the days, they were saying about how heavy metal music can influence the youth. Even the Columbine, the two guys that were involved in Columbine, they were saying that they were listening to heavy metal music and somehow that influenced them to go out and do what they do. The point is, music can be used as a double-edged sword. It can be used to wake you up, and it can be used to dumb you down. And that's what the situation with Mozart had. Ludwig van Beethoven. There is no question his Fifth and Ninth Symphonies are the two most popular works of art in musical history. What would you be willing to sacrifice to compose the greatest symphony ever written? How much are you willing to give up to be the greatest composer to ever live, now and forever? Beethoven was never as talented as a boy as Mozart was. Matter of fact, Beethoven had no talent. Then how did he become such a great musician if he had no talent? Beethoven's father, Johann Beethoven, wanted his son to be like Mozart was. At the age of 6 to 10, his father beat him like a dog to get him to learn how to play the piano, but the boy only struggled to learn how to play. His father would often take him on road trips to perform gigs in front of small audiences. His father, Johann, tried so hard to get his son to be as famous as Mozart was until one fateful day a man appeared and offered to take the 10-year-old little Beethoven under his wings and teach him musical composition. That man's name is Christian Gottlieb Neefe, Neefe. You can do your own research and Google his name, and you will see that Christian Neefe is not only a member of the Illuminati, but at the time in 1881, he was the head. He was the leader of the Bavarian Illuminati. In other words, he was Adam Weishaupt's boss. He was the one who sent Adam Weishaupt to the United States to infiltrate Freemasonry and start the New World Order. It is he, Christian Neefe, who taught Beethoven how to write music. What a coincidence. Really, what a coincidence. Your piano teacher happens to be the head of the Illuminati, and you just happens to become the greatest composer ever lived. It's quite easy to put the pieces together. Beethoven's father sold his son out to the devil, the same way that Joe Jackson beat his son Michael Jackson and his brothers for riches and fame. Beethoven sold his soul in exchange for the ability to perform and to become the world's greatest composer. This is why he was so depressed all the time and going mad, because he was possessed. He was possessed by the entity, the spiritual entity that he sold his soul to. Beethoven didn't write the great symphonies and concertos that he's famous for. The spiritual entity that he sold his soul to wrote them through him. This is why he went deaf. He had to sacrifice his hearing as part of the deal he made. This is why he was still able to compose, still able even after going deaf around 1801, while writing the Moonlight Sonata. He was able to continue to write great music after going completely deaf, because he wasn't really writing the music. He was only a vessel. Beethoven was heavily influenced by Freemasonry. His Ninth Symphony, as well as his Third Symphony, which he dedicated to Napoleon, has Masonic implications throughout. The final movement of his Ninth Symphony is actually the national anthem of the European Union. Selling one's soul for fame is nothing new. It's been going on. It goes back to the story of Johann Faust, who made a deal with the devil back in the 15th century. Period. The term is called Faustian bargain. It's where a person or a group of people or a race of people surrender moral integrity in order to achieve a level of power and success for a limited period of time, for a certain period of time. The key phrase is limited term. At some point, the person or group has to die within a certain time frame. Beethoven died before he could finish his 10th symphony, which he actually started. He was told he could only do 9 symphonies, and that if he go beyond the 9th symphony, if he go beyond number 9, he will die. And he never got a chance to actually publish it. Among other people like himself who sold their souls for fame, they end up dying after attempting to write beyond the 9th symphony. It seems that the number 9, in numerology, the number 9 represents completion, and this is also known as the curse of the 9th symphony. And it seems like it only applies to those who went the route of Beethoven and sold their soul, pretty much. That's why it doesn't affect other composers. It affected other composers like Gustav Mahler, who was told not to go beyond the 9th symphony, and he disobeyed. And he tried to be slick and write a 10th symphony, but he didn't call it a symphony. And instead, after writing that piece, he wrote another piece which he called the 10th symphony, which is really the 11th symphony, and died before finishing that symphony, by the way. Another composer, Anton Bruckner, tried to complete 11 symphonies but died while writing his 9th symphony. He was actually afraid to finish his 9th symphony and instead started his 10th symphony, hoping to finish his 10th and then go back and finish the 9th. So there's a lot of madness going on. I mean, why are you afraid to finish the 9th symphony? Finish your symphony. Franz Schubert, another composer, same deal. He tried playing musical chairs with his symphonies, changes the numbers around, hoping to confuse the devil. He never completed his 10th symphony. He never completed his 8th symphony, which is a famous symphony known as the Unfinished Symphony. So it appears that he finishes. Actually, he didn't finish the 9th either. And he never finished his 10th symphony, which is also another popular symphony referred to as the Great. So pretty much, he never completed any of his last 3 or 4 symphonies, because he was basically trying to write them all at the same time. He figured he can escape the curse if he write them in backwards. Like he would finish number 11, then finish number 10, then finish number 9, work his way backwards, thinking that he can somehow break the curse that way, but it didn't work. And then you have Dvorak, another composer from the Czech Republic, also tried to do the same thing. Um, End up only completing his Ninth Symphony, which is called the New World Symphony, or actually the New World Order Symphony, which is the correct term. And I believe there's a couple of other composers also who went that route. There's one other composer that I want to mention that sold his soul for talent, and that is Niccolo Paganini. He's an Italian violinist and composer who, during his time, people actually believed that he sold his soul for his talent, and this was something. Something that was going on for many years until he had to prove himself. He had to prove that he's actually a human being, because people could not believe that a human being could play the violin the way he did. And if you Google his name, you will see a lot of references to the fact that people still believe that this man sold his soul for talent. And by the way, just in case some of you are wondering whether or not it's true that Beethoven sold his soul and didn't actually write his works, but he was influenced by spiritual entities that actually composed the work through him. In case you may have doubts about that, there's a guy named Robert Johnson, who is considered the founder of rock and roll. Back in the early 1900s, it was said that he wanted to be a famous guitar player, and he couldn't play the guitar at all. And one day, the so-called legend is that he went to the crossroads, he made a pact with the devil, and came back, and all of a sudden he can play the guitar, and people were astonished. They couldn't understand how in such a short period of time he was able to master the guitar to the point where he is now considered the founder of rock and roll. Again, there's evidence out there that proves that a lot of these musicians sold their soul for the ability to play to sing, to perform the way they do.